Homeschoolers, you remember me? Think back now. Think back in your memory. 5 years at least. I've been here on YouTube. I go by the name of Uncle Larry. You remember me? We spent a lot of time together, you and I. Talking about music and life. It's really getting hot outside. The dog days of summer are here. It's kind of been pretty chill up until now. Summer hasn't really kicked our ass yet, but ooh, today's one of those days. It rains, it's been raining like crazy, and then it starts getting real hot. And like as soon as you open a door and walk outside, Vince Gill said, it's like walking into somebody's mouth. That's what it feels like out there. Good day to sit in the air conditioning and play some guitar. I'm gonna get into some deep Nashville history for you right here. Okay, history lesson by Uncle Larry. Okay. You guys all know about the Nashville sound, right? You know, that was basically forged by Owen Bradley, Chet Atkins, Billy Sherrill, all the legendary producers that really sort of defined the Nashville sound, you know, and all the legendary session players, Pig Robbins, you know, Grady Martin, you know, so many, Buddy Emmons, you know, all the great players that made this town known as Music City, right? So, you know, as I've grown up, you know, I moved here in 1992, and I didn't know shit about Nashville when I first got here. I didn't know, you know, Buddy Harmon from Buddy Hackett. But as time has gone on, I've always been fascinated with the history of this town. And boy, I have met some people who really know the history of what happened here. You know, like several guys that I've known, like Paul Franklin, for example, one of many people you'll talk to. Man, Russ Paul, and even a young guy that I just met recently, Eddie Dunlap, the steel player. Like these people, you know, they study. Vince Gill is one of them. They study the history of this town, and they know who did what, when, and they talked to everyone that was there, interviewed people, and like Paul Franklin, like there's no, you can call him and ask him who played on any classic Nashville record, and he'll know the answer. You know, he knows the shit inside and out. So, you know, as time's gone on, I grew those guys, and I learned more and more about Nashville history. You know, I didn't even get here until 1992, but you know, all the shit that happened in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, even into the 80s was legendary, and the guys that did it, right? Here is a piece of Nashville history, my dear friends. Okay, this is crazy. You're not gonna believe this. Okay, in 1961, let me try to show you. I'm gonna have to unplug this phone here because it's running out of batteries. But in 1954, can you see this here? Let's get this right. I hope this thing doesn't die on me, this battery. 1954, Owen Bradley, the famous producer, opened the studio called the Quonset Hut. Okay, and it was literally a Quonset Hut, like designed from an army surplus. And they started making records in there in the 50s, legendary records, Patsy Cline, everything that you can imagine. So many hits out of there. Here he is with the original, that's Owen Bradley with the original Langevin console that they had in that studio, okay? So imagine this, as I get the cord to plug this phone back in. In 1961, Grady Martin, who was probably the most popular session guitar player of that day, had this guitar, this very guitar, and plugged it into that console, that Langevin console, working on a Marty Robbins record, a song called "Don't Worry About Me." It was a big hit. I'll put a link to it for any of those any of you guys who aren't super old school country aficionados. Pretty normal country tune. I'll give you a little taste of it here. Let me show you. I'll even play it. I'll probably get sued for this, but who gives a fuck? I'm going to my Apple Music. I'm pulling it up. Here you go. Marty Robbins, "Don't Worry About Me." Okay?
Love can't be explained, can't be controlled. One day it's warm, next day it's cold. Don't pity me.
You can hear that tic-tac bass. Hear that? That's this guitar. They would double the upright bass with these electric basses, long scale Silvertone, Danelectro. So, right about after the second chorus, it gets pretty crazy. Check it out. Holy shit.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
Okay, so what happened was Grady plugged this guitar that was the Quonset Hut house baritone that sat in the closet. Plugged it into that console, and the channel strip failed. It had a bad cap in it, and they were trying to get a clean sound, but it got all fuzzy and distorted. And they were at first they were annoyed, and then they started realizing that it was a pretty cool sound, and it was the first ever recorded version of Fuzz guitar, 1961. The record was a hit. It came out and blew people's minds, and then Grady started using that blown up channel on that Longevin console for making his own instrumental records. He made a record called The Fuzz in 1961 that was also a hit. And there was another one called Twist and Turn or something like that. I've been trying to read up on all this stuff that also had some fuzz guitar in it. And then they promptly sent that circuit off to Gibson, and Maestro built the first fuzz pedal, the FZ1. You know, that one looks like a doorstop. That was based on that blown up circuit of that Longevin console. And that was the sound that you heard on Satisfaction by the Stones, but it had already been done in Nashville. First fuzz guitar ever, and Grady Martin played it on this guitar. This guitar, I just bought it from a friend of mine recently, and it is the actual one that he used. It's here's a letter from Grunes. This was brought in by Grady Martin's son, Tal Martin, who is sadly no longer with us. But it says, in March of 2011, it says, this 1956 Danelectro 6-string bass, serial number 2126, was bought new by my father, Grady Martin. It was the first Danelectro 6-string bass in Nashville. He used this instrument to play the tic-tac bass parts on numerous Nashville sessions. He kept this instrument in a closet at the Quonset Hut studio in Nashville, and it was frequently borrowed for session work by other Nashville musicians. See, I've heard about this bass being around, and it has been owned by Jeff White's, the guy that I'm in Vince's band. Jeff White's wife, Laura White, has owned it for a long time. You got to dig this original case that it comes in. Check this out, man. The case is so rad. Look at this, man. Look at that case. Original case. Isn't that amazing? So, I'm not really like a collector guy. You guys know I like old guitars and stuff like that. I don't buy instruments with celebrity attachment and things like that. You guys know I'm not into that. But I saw a list of things that she was selling recently, and this jumped out at me, because I just love these guitars to begin with, aside from the fact that it was Grady Martin's. But it's just a cool guitar. And Auerbach has one of these, an old one like this in his studio, and we always use it, and it just sounds amazing. And the pickups are good and strong. I mean, like, you can hear it. Like, here's just I'll show you two or three of the pickups. Here's the famous middle sound, which is both pickups. It's got some yellowing and aging on the sides, on the linen sides, but they're Coke bottle headstock, but it's in pretty good shape overall. But here's the treble pickup. It's tuned from A to A, and on a baritone like that, you have to use gauge like 13 through 70. I think this one might be 14 through 73 or something like that. And the neck pickup is super juicy. Here's a really cool little factoid about this guitar. Here it is being plunked on by none other than the king himself. Check that out, man. That's him playing this guitar in his military gear. What a cool thing. So, I just wanted to show you guys this. Probably the only really collector instrument that I own. It's not really my bag, but I just thought it was cool. And this is something that I'll actually really use, because baritones are, fuck, we use them all the time. The baritone that I have now, I really love. It's a it's like a telly body made by Bluesman Vintage in Nashville. It's got 2 humbuckers. But for years and years, I always played these lipstick pickups on baritones. But, over time, I got a little tired of that sound because I always, I used it so much. So I sold all the ones that I had. And then I bought that humbucker one, and I've been loving that. But this is the first lipstick one I've had in a long time. Bringing back a lot of memories of the years I used these. But I had this on the Vince gig the other night, and I used it on a couple songs, man. And Vince turned around and he was like, damn, man, that thing sounds great. For the kind of shit we're doing in the Vince band, it's actually better sounding than the one that I've been using. The bridge pickup is nasty. And it's surprisingly, doesn't really need anything. I could probably leave these frets on it. The nut could use a little bit of attention, but overall, it plays really great. All I had to do was just file this. The nut was pretty high on. It was kind of hard to play, but I got it rocking pretty good. I kind of don't want to fuck with it pretty much because it is what it is, right? And man, aside from oh god, we have been busy lately. This is I knew that this last week and a half was coming for a while, and I was sort of like, God, I hope we make it through that. 10 or 11 straight days of working my ass off, and finally got a couple days off, and I'm glad. I spent yesterday in the studio working with the Little River Band, kind of like one of those sort of things where they still have the name. There's one original member, but they were recording in Nashville. Man, we were listening to some of those classic old songs that they did. They were Australian, and we were listening to Cool Change and some of their Lady, some of those songs. Very cool to hear that stuff. But it was fun to work with those guys. We are getting dangerously close to the course being done. Any minute now, friends. I will give you the date. I think it's going to be within the next week. What was that second? I have so much stuff to tell you. My mind is just racing. I was out on the road when all that stuff with Brian Wilson happened, and I've been listening to a lot of Beach Boys lately, trying to gather my memories about all that stuff, man. It's sad to lose him. Man, there's a really cool video on YouTube. You've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, it's pretty cool. A couple multi-part thing on YouTube where it shows them in the studio making God Only Knows, where he's directing the orchestra and session musicians. And man, you think I'm hard on guys in the studio. Check that out. He was pretty rough on those players, but he knew what he wanted. And it was pretty cool. Check that out if you can find it. The making of God Only Knows, where he's telling all the French horn players that they're playing it wrong and shit. It's pretty awesome. Sad loss, and Brian was a genius. I did get to play on one Beach Boys song. Many years ago, I played on a Beach Boys song called That's Why God Made the Radio. And it actually was a minor hit. And man, I never got to meet Brian on that session, but I was overdubbed after the vocals were already on, and just being in the studio working on that project and hearing that voice in the headphones while you're recording was quite an experience. I remember. That's I probably never brought that up, but I probably should tell you about that. That's I've been lucky over these years, to like work with a lot of these sort of people that I grew up listening to, right? And like legendary voices that I have spent countless hours listening to on records. And then you get in the studio with them and you hear that voice in the phones while you're working on something. It's that voice, man. This is hundreds of times this has happened to me, and it's like it never gets old. It's a really cool experience when you're in the studio and you're working with somebody that you've been listening to your whole life. It's really fucking cool. It brings back the 13-year-old child inside of me, that just was a music fan and loved all those records in the first place. God, man, it's intoxicating. Probably I would say, honestly, that's one of my favorite parts about being a session player, is you get to work with these people you've been listening to your whole life, It's really cool. And, man, what a trip that is. Never gets old, friends. And I think that when I talk to other session players, guys that have been doing it as long as I have, they all say the same thing. Like, that is one of the coolest parts of this job, when you're in a studio and you hear fucking Willie's voice coming through the phones, or fucking, anybody, any legendary person you worked with. It's great. And, man, there's so much to tell you that I'm overwhelmed, I can't even think. There's been so much going on. Been working so hard. Been doing some good road gigs. We had a lot of fun. I took Marshall out with me this last weekend on the Vince run because, like I told you, he didn't want to be in that camp that he was in. So we had a ball, and he really adapted to that road life quickly. I think I can already see him as a road warrior, man, musician. I can already see it. If AI doesn't take away our musical future, I promise you he'll be out there on the road. And I bought him his first lawnmower today. First time I ever set that 12-year-old boy loose with a lawnmower, and the grass was wet as hell. And he was having to figure out how to push that mower and keep it up off the ground enough so the motor wouldn't bog down from the wet grass. And I told him, buddy, don't worry. Next time you do this when it's dry, it ain't gonna be this hard. He had a rough go on his first try. Friends, me and Grady are saying goodbye for today. Hope you enjoyed. Get you some of those lipsticks for the road. Come on, friends. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.